Today, I'm going to explore the best way to listen to music or something else while riding your bike safely. And spoiler alert, these are not it. Hi. Obviously, if you're riding with traffic, you should not listen to anything, except maybe for directions to where you're going. But if you are in a separated bike path or a residential street without much traffic, it can be nice to have something playing, especially on a long ride. I tried regular earbuds once or twice, but they did not feel very safe. They muffle the environment too much, and even in a separated path, I still like to be aware of people, other riders, and unexpected situations. Before starting this video, I had been using Bone Conduction headsets, and these are pretty good. They don't sit directly on your ears, so you barely notice them. Plus, the headband design makes them really secure in your head, so you'd never really worry about them falling off or losing them. Their main feature is that they pipe the sound through your skull directly into your inner ear, which leaves your ear canals completely open, and that means that you can still hear everything around you, which is great. But that's also their downside, because your ear canals are completely open, which again, it's a good thing when you're riding, but it can also make the sound from the headset really hard to hear, especially when you are in a loud environment. Even on a quiet street, if you're facing a lot of wind, you can have a really hard time hearing this. They're meant more for running, hiking, walking around sketchy neighborhoods, but I did find a solution for the wind problem. When you use a microphone outside, you can get one of these. They block the sound of the wind, but all the other sound is basically unaffected. I figured there had to be a version of this that can be mounted on, on a human. And after searching a lot, there's not that many options, and the only one I could find is this. It's a headband with a low density sponge that blocks the wind, but not the sound. They work really well at reducing the wind noise. Let's do a quick test. Try hearing the cars over the wind. So yeah, with these I can hear much better. And that's why this has been my setup for the last several months. This setup works, and it works well. But it does have a few downsides for me. It's possible that none of this is a problem for you, but in my case, I don't just go on a ride and come straight home. I use my bike to go do errands and go to coffee shops, usually to work away from home for a while, and other times just to hang out there for a bit and take a little break in my day. Oftentimes I want to listen to something or watch a video on my phone. Anything that keeps me from interacting with other humans. However, coffee shops or street corners can be loud, and in those environments, I do want to be a bit more isolated from my environment, and these just can't really do that. In fact, it's the opposite of what they're meant to do. I could carry another set of earbuds with me and use those when I stop, but then that's another thing to bring with me and keep charged. I do happen to always carry musicians' earplugs in my keychain for unrelated reasons. Hearing loss runs in my family, so I try to protect my ears in loud environments. And these come really handy in situations like unexpectedly loud movies or restaurants with live music. Since these bypass the ear canal, that means I can use earplugs and still hear the sound coming from these. The sound is not great though. When you have the earplugs, it sounds a bit like you're underwater. The second downside is that this whole thing just got complicated. Now I have to carry my headset, the wind muffs, and the earplugs. Plus, that means there's two things that I have to put around my head before I can put my helmet on. But the last reason that led me to look for other options in the first place, and this actually might be the most important for me, is that since the headset has to compete with the noise in the environment, I usually have to crank the volume fairly high so that I can hear them. Their design bypasses the ear canal, but they can still damage the nerves in my inner ear. All that leads me to the next solution that I've been trying, and that's earbuds, but not any earbuds. They need to have active noise cancelling, or ANC. Wait, noise cancelling, you say? Isn't that the opposite of being aware of your environment? Yes, but the way ANC works is by using microphones on the outside to hear the environment, and they use the environment sound to create an opposite, if you will. And this opposite sound crashes with the original, and the waves counteract each other, resulting in silence. For biking, I'm more interested in this thing called transparency mode, which a lot of the modern ANC earbuds have. In this mode, instead of creating an opposite sound, the earbuds just direct the sound from the outside to your ears as if you're wearing nothing. Except now they can also mix in your desired sounds like directions, music, or whatever. On some of these, you can tweak how much transparency versus noise cancelling you want. Basically, you can mix between external sounds and your audio. All these benefits sounded great to me because while I need to be aware of what's happening around me, I don't need to hear helicopters, motorcycles, and ambulances in their full glory. And I live in Los Angeles, so this happens way more often than I would like. I was particularly excited to try a smart transparency mode that Bose and the Airpods Pro have. Each brand has a different name for it, but the idea is that you're in transparency mode so you can hear everything, but when there's a loud noise, they lower the volume so it doesn't hurt your ears. So which ones to get? Well, I might have gone overboard, but I wanted to try this smart transparency mode, so I got the Bose and the Airpods Pro, but since I had the Airpods Pro, which are mostly made for iPhone, I wanted to get an Android counterpart, so I got the Pixel Buds as well. I've heard the Galaxy Buds and the Sonys are really good as well, but I was already over budget, and there are tons of other reviews online already comparing them. I did want to get something from the more affordable end of the spectrum since noise cancelling earbuds can get really expensive, and I found these. I spent the next several weeks trying all the different earbuds. They have a lot of differences in terms of features, comfort, and sound, but for this video, I just want to know how well ANC does against the alternatives specifically for bike riding. And for that, they all performed about the same, which is horrible, at least at first. There was a problem I did not anticipate. Remember that both noise cancelling and transparency mode work by listening to the environment. The problem is that they are not designed for the amount of wind that you get while riding a bike. At even just 7 to 9 miles per hour, the wind overwhelms the tiny microphones and creates this really annoying sound. This happened on both noise cancelling and transparency mode in all the sets that I tested, and it pretty much made them unrideable. So there went that theory. However, since I have the wind muffs, I tried them on and they made a huge difference. And that's the good news. Once I had the wind muffs, all the earbuds performed really well. Some were more comfortable than others, especially since the wind muffs do push the buds against your ear. I did add a little foam layer to my wind muffs to give them more space, and that helped quite a bit. As for the smart transparency on the Bose and the AirPods Pro, neither worked well for me, and actually for opposite reasons. With the AirPods Pro, I don't know, it didn't seem to do anything. Every car, motorcycle, ambulance, etc., they all seem as loud as before. On the other hand, the Bose are too sensitive. Anytime a car or motorcycle goes by, or the wind noise goes through the muffs, or even when you speak, they take the sound away. It can be a bit distracting and leave you isolated from the environment unexpectedly, so it's not great for riding. If it had levels of sensitivity, that would be awesome. Maybe with an update, both of these can get better, but I wouldn't choose either of them for that feature. All the earbuds that I tested on transparency mode were less loud than having nothing, and they still kept you aware, so that's a win in my book. Just be careful not to drop them. Alright, let's move on to the last technology, and that's the open earbuds. These are earbuds, but they have a hole in the middle to let the external sounds in. They're actually a late addition to this video. Even though I was already over budget, I found some used ones and tested them. And you know what? I'm glad I did because they're pretty good. In fact, just for riding and sound quality, this might be the best ones, but they do have some big caveats. So let's start with the good. First of all, these are the ones that sound the best without the wind muffs. They don't have the wind problem that the noise cancelling have, and they're in your ear, so they sound louder and better than the Bone Conduction ones. I do have to crank up the volume if I'm going, say, over 10 miles an hour or so, which I don't like, so I wore them with the wind muffs, and they work really well, especially at low speeds. Another advantage of these, specifically for riding, is that these don't use touch controls like all the noise cancelling earbuds do. Instead, these work with taps. You tap your head twice or 3 times for different actions. You can assign different sides for different things. I tested a bunch of different ways of tapping and yeah, they work. The reason this is better for riding is that you can wear them under the wind muffs and you still have full control. Tap your head or you can tap the wind muffs directly. Let's get into the bad things. The first one might not affect you at all, but to my ears, they were just not comfortable. And this was made worse by the fact that often I felt like they were going to fall off my ears. They never did, and it might have just been a feeling, it's not a big problem once you put the wind muffs in, because they push it in, but still uncomfortable for me. And obviously they also have the same problem as the Bone Conduction in that they cannot block noise once you arrive at your destination. And that's it. Not a lot of bad things, but enough for me not to be able to use them. Alright, and that's the 3 technologies I tried. Let's see which one's best for your case.
You know why? I think it's time for a headset. Roundup. Headset. Roundup.
First of all, I think the real winners of all this are the wind muffs. And I know they're expensive for what they are, but it's a piece of sponge with a headband. But whether you use these or you find something else, the most important factor I found is controlling the wind noise. As to which set of earbuds or headset should you choose, well, if you only need them for writing, I would go with either the Open Earbuds or the Bone Conduction headset. Without wind muffs, either of them is going to be okay for directions as long as you crank the volume up, or when you're writing slow. The Open Earbuds are a bit easier to hear and they sound a little bit better, but neither is going to give you a very good sound with a lot of wind. If you're not going to use wind muffs, I would be careful with the Open Earbuds because they feel like they're going to fall off, whereas the Bone Conduction, they have the headband behind, so they feel very secure and they don't go into your ear, so they're a little bit more comfortable. Of course, that is not a problem with the wind muffs because they push the earbuds in, and in that case, the Open Earbuds do have better sound and better control since you can tap them instead of reaching under the wind muff. Plus, the headband of the Bone Conduction headset prevents the wind muffs from sitting flush against your face, so you do get a little bit more wind noise. It's not an obnoxious amount, you can still hear well, but the Open Earbuds do sound better when you have a lot of wind. As for comfort, if you don't like earbuds or anything in your ears, the Bone Conduction is a much better choice. Now, if you want a single pair of earbuds that you can use not just for writing but also to listen to something in a loud location, I would definitely go with noise cancelling earbuds. You will definitely need the wind muffs since none of them work with any kind of wind, but in combination they do work nicely. The only ones I'm a bit mixed, unfortunately, are the least expensive ones that I got. While you can hear the environment around you, it's just not as clear in these as in the others, and I could hear the vibrations coming from the bike transferred through my head, which is not the case in any of the other pairs I've tested. Plus, they stick out the most, which means the wind muffs push them in quite a bit, and they can get really uncomfortable quite quickly actually. You might not have the comfort issue, but even for me, these are okay for short trips and the noise cancelling is decent. I've seen them for as low as $50, but their normal price seems to be $100. At that point, you might want to consider an $80 Bone Conduction headset for when you're writing, and a $20 or $30 set of earbuds for occasions when you want to isolate from the environment. But if you find these for $50, yeah. If I have to choose amongst all the earbuds that I tested, I hate to say it because they're the most expensive, but the Bose were the best for me. They're not the best earbuds overall because they lack several things from the others that I like. But for me, when I'm writing, they have the most pleasant mix between environment and audio. And for hanging out at my destination, they definitely have the best noise cancelling. With that said, any of the noise cancelling earbuds I tested will work for writing and keeping you aware. And that probably applies to the ones I didn't test as well, as long as they have a transparency mode. To be completely honest, after weeks of wearing earbuds on every single ride, it was really nice to go ear commando. Anyway, I hope that was useful. I made a separate video where I go into more details of each of the sets that I tested, and I score them on different categories. If you want to see our alternative to carrying a bike lock, or any of our other bike-related videos, subscribe and check out the rest of the channel. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.